Hello everybody and welcome back. This is the 5th time I'm recording this lecture. I'm super hoping that this time it's going to work. So before we get started on this lecture, I want to do a little housekeeping. Your analysis essay and your journal is due like now. So if you haven't, go ahead and submit your analysis essay on Blackboard. I have a link in this week 9 folder for you to submit it. It's still up, so go ahead and submit that for me and email your journals to me. Something else that I wanted to tell you is that we are not extending the semester. They talked about extending it, but we actually aren't doing that, which means we're going to have to cut out some time in the research essay, but that's fine. We'll get there eventually. And I'll keep you up to date. So let's talk about the compare-contrast essay. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is this assignment sheet, and I'm going to go ahead and open all of these while I say that, and then the computer is going to take forever to open them. Oh, it's opening them on my other monitor. Hang on. Let me move them. Okay. Don't want that one. We're going to start with the assignment sheet. Okay. And if you can't tell by the name up here, this is my husband's computer. So the compare-contrast essay. That's the one we're starting on. So in any compare-contrast essay, you are comparing and contrasting. Pretty simple. There's really not much else to say about what kind of essay this is. So for this essay, it will have to be in MLA format, as always. It must be at least 3 pages long and no more than 4 pages. And remember, you have to have 21 lines on that third page for it to be considered 3 full pages. So just keep that in mind. Can't use I, you, very, a lot of, or any of those other forbidden words that I hate. You have to have an italicized thesis statement. And your thesis statement must be arguable and supported with examples from both stories. I'm going to get into it in a minute, what I mean by arguable. We'll talk about that. You don't need a summary of what happened in either story. I read the stories. I know what happened. You must have at least 3 supporting points or body paragraphs from the story and no more than 5 supporting points or body paragraphs. Now, what that means is if you have 3 supporting points, that means you have 3 body paragraphs. That means you have 5 paragraphs total. Introduction, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, and conclusion. So if you have 5 supporting points, you have 7 body paragraphs, okay? So we want to keep it in between 5 and 7 paragraphs total. You must have quotes from both stories, okay? There's no limit on the number of quotes, but you need at least 2 quotes from each story, so 4 quotes total. Quotes should be 3 lines or less. Don't quote stack. Essays must follow all instructions and requirements, including prompt, and you must have a works cited page. I'm going to post that probably shortly after this video gets posted. So all you'll have to do for the works cited page is copy it and paste it into your document, and then you'll be good to go. For your research essay, I make you do your works cited page on your own, but for these first 2, I do it for you. Okay, let's talk about due dates. So today, on Wednesday, and I wish I had been able to get this, my first 70,000 videos to upload, but today for my Monday, Wednesday class, or tomorrow for my Tuesday, Thursday, or really whenever you can do it, your pre-write is due on Friday, April 3rd by 5 p.m. via email. So your pre-write can be anything. You just brainstorm. You can use the little Venn diagram. You can draw a picture. You can dictate on your phone. You can write it by hand. You can type it on your computer. You can type it on your notes in your phone. It doesn't matter, just as long as you get your ideas on paper. And don't forget, your pre-write must include your thesis. And we're going to talk about your thesis in a minute when we get down here. Your rough draft, I need a full rough draft from you on Monday, April 6th by 4:30 for my Monday, Wednesday folks, and Tuesday, April 7th by 8 a.m. from my Tuesday, Thursday folks. So you have to email it to me. and I need you to email it to me on time. If you don't, you're going to miss out on peer review. Now, we are going to be peer reviewing all next week, and I'll have a whole nother video on peer review and how we're going to do that, but just know that next week we're peer reviewing, and you will have to turn in your peer reviews by Friday, April 10th by 8 p.m., also on email. Your final draft, Monday, Wednesday, that's due Monday, April 13th by 4:30. Tuesday, Thursday, it's due Tuesday, April 14th by 8 a.m. So it's just by normal class time, and you just have to submit it on Blackboard, and you'll just be submitting your final draft. I'll already have your rough draft and your peer reviews. All of that's going to be done through email, so you'll already have points for that. It'll just be your final draft that you're turning in on the 13th and the 14th. So, when you compare and contrast something, one of the things always naturally comes out as better. So that's your thesis, okay? So you've got LT's Theory of Pets and Children of the Corn. You can compare and contrast so many things with these stories. LT and Bert, Lulubelle and Vicky, the two relationships, the impending sense of doom, the stories themselves, the Axeman and He Who Walks Behind the Rose. If you have another idea for something you want to compare and contrast, just let me know. I'll most likely approve it, but I want to know what it is before you start. So, again, when you're comparing and contrasting, one thing is always going to come out better or more something than the other thing. For example, if I were to pick LT and Bert, I could say LT is a better husband than Bert, or Bert is a better husband than LT, or Bert is more of a manly man than LT. If I do the two relationships, I could say Bert and Vicky have a better relationship than LT and Lulubelle. So that's the thesis statement that you're coming up with. You're just saying thing A is better than or more something than the other thing. Okay? So I have some notes that I'm going to show you now about each thing. And this assignment sheet and the notes, everything that I'm showing you is on Blackboard in this week 10 folder. Okay, all of this stuff is right here. So here are the lecture notes. So for LT, he's not super masculine. He's a nice enough guy, but he's pretty neglectful of Lulubelle. And he loves Lucy. And remember, cats equal women. And he's an alcoholic. Well, okay, maybe not an alcoholic, but he drinks. If you compare him to Bert, Bert is super, super masculine. He's ex-military. And he also hits Vicky, which is something that LT doesn't do. You could say that maybe LT manipulates Vicky, but he's not physically abusive. And I don't see Bert cuddling up with a cat like LT does with Lucy. Lulubelle speaks her mind no matter what. She's very assertive. She was able to leave LT, and she seems like an okay person. And she's not the typical housewife, really, even though she stays home all the time. You know, we talked about this. She's a little too mouthy to be like the perfect housewife. Vicky, on the other hand, she does speak her mind as well as just like Lulubelle. She's pretty assertive. The main difference is that she doesn't leave Bert. She wants to work on their marriage, whereas Lulubelle's like, no, thanks, I'm out. But Vicky is also pretty hysterical. I mean, she starts to go insane in the car almost from the beginning when she's playing with the little corn idol. She starts to lose her grip on reality a little bit. And we don't ever get that from Lulubelle, although we don't see Lulubelle in any scary, sticky situations like what we see Vicky in. So now the next prompt would be the two relationships. So, I was on the right one, wasn't I? So LT and Lulubelle, they mostly fought about the pets. They did seem to really love each other at one point or another. They do break up, and they do have a manipulative relationship. You know, they're always like that instance where LT's like, if you take my dog to the pound, if you take that cat to the pound, I'll guarantee I'm going to take the dog to the pound on Monday. Bert and Vicky fought all the time about everything, about every little thing. They don't seem to really like each other. They do have an abusive relationship, and they don't break up. They are trying to work on their marriage. They're both actively involved in their marriage, whereas LT was more... he didn't think anything was wrong with Lulubelle. Bert knows Vicky's not happy, and Vicky knows Bert's not. But that's really the main difference between LT and Lulubelle and Bert and Vicky. LT and Lulubelle really do seem to love each other, and Bert and Vicky, I mean, they just don't. In fact, at one point it says that Bert has this vision of his hand flying off the steering wheel and busting the ex-prom queen in the chops. I mean, that doesn't seem like a good marriage. And then another one is the impending sense of doom. And what I mean by that is just like the element of horror in both stories. Now, LT's Theory of Pets is mostly a comedy. You don't really get much of a sense of horror until the end when you find out Lulubelle has probably been murdered. It's kind of a lighthearted story, and the horror in it is more realistic. The Axeman is a real person. He's a serial killer, right? Now, in Children of the Corn, it's obviously a horror story from the beginning. I mean, they're driving in a cornfield in the middle of nowhere. It's like horror movie central. And immediately, somebody dies. So it hits you right up front with the horror, and it's a supernatural horror. He Who Walks Behind the Rose is not a real person. He's more like a devil or demon character. If you're familiar with the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, he's kind of related to that. If you've ever read The Stand, he's another aspect of Randall Flagg as well. But he's not necessarily a real person. And Children of the Corn is more brutal and more graphic. We have 5 or 6 people die in Children of the Corn, and in LT's Theory of Pets, we have 1 dog and 1 possible death that we don't even really see. So it is more brutal, and it's more supernatural than LT's Theory of Pets. And there's not really any comedy in Children of the Corn. In LT, you get to laugh a little bit, but not so much in Children of the Corn. Now, the Axeman and He Who Walks Behind the Rose. Again, Axeman is a real person. He's a serial killer. He Who Walks Behind the Rose is not a real person. Axeman has never been caught. He is a rapist, and we could probably call him a thrill killer, maybe. Whereas He Who Walks Behind the Rose is a cult leader, and he demands sacrifices of adults. So Axeman is like killing for like the thrill of it, whereas He Who Walks Behind the Rose, he's like saying you have to sacrifice these people so that your way of life can be sustained, and if you don't sacrifice people, then I am going to kill the corn, and your way of life is not going to be sustainable anymore. So he actually has a purpose beyond just wanting to kill people like the Axeman does. Okay, and then I wanted to show you, I've typed up a quick outline. So, for your introduction for this story, you want to have your thesis statement and your argument, okay? And the example I came up with is 2 of Stephen King's greatest works are LT's Theory of Pets and Children of the Corn. Both stories feature horrific deaths of main characters. However, the deaths in Children of the Corn are scarier than the death in LT's Theory of Pets. So that's my thesis statement, right? Deaths in Children of the Corn scarier than deaths in LT's Theory of Pets. Don't overthink this argument. You're just saying one thing is better or more scary or worse than the other thing. That's your argument. So my body paragraph number 1 is going to be focusing on the deaths in Children of the Corn are more brutal. So I'm going to talk about how the adults are sacrificed, how they're hung up on crosses with like corn shucks stuffed in their mouths. And they're killed by children, which is pretty horrifying in and of itself. Now, whereas in LT's Theory of Pets, we don't have that. We don't even know that that Lulubelle is dead. The only blood they ever find is Frank's. So we don't even know if she's actually been murdered. So I'm going to talk about both stories in this body paragraph. Likewise, in body paragraph 2, I'm going to talk about both stories again. And the next point is that there's more foreshadowing in Children of the Corn. So I'm going to talk about how the death immediately foreshadows that this is going to be a horror story in Children of the Corn. And I'm going to talk about how the LT's Theory of Pets is more of a comedy up until the end. And then in paragraph 3, I'm going to talk about there are just very simply, there's more deaths in Children of the Corn. Again, we kill 5 or 6 people off in Children of the Corn, which is a whole lot more than we kill off in LT's Theory of Pets. So in each body paragraph, I'm talking about both stories. And that's the easiest way to do it. You're comparing and contrasting in each body paragraph. You're not going to do compare in one paragraph and contrast in another. You're going to compare and contrast and talk about both stories in each paragraph. And then in your conclusion, you wrap everything up and hit the highlights and say you want to restate your thesis. So I could say the deaths in Children of the Corn are scarier because they are more brutal. There's more foreshadowing, and there are more people killed than in LT's Theory of Pets. So that's kind of what I want you to do for your conclusion. And then I also posted a rubric, which I'm not going to go over with you, but you do have that you can look at if you want to. I'm also going to post that works cited page thing for you so that you can just copy and paste. I don't know what's happening. Here, go back to the other screen. So you can just copy and paste the works cited page and be good with that, and that'll be in here as well. So I know that online classes are not what we signed up for, but we are going to get through this. I'm hoping to be able to post at least one lecture video a week, probably more. If you have any questions, do feel free to email me. I'm also going to put my phone number out. I'm going to send that out in an email. There will be some guidelines about texting or calling me, but I'm also going to give y'all that option as well. If you have any questions, just reach out. I'm pretty much always available. And I will get to you as soon as I can. Sometimes I do have another job that's considered essential, so I'm not completely quarantined right now. So I will answer you when I can. Just know that I'm not ignoring you. I'll get to you as soon as I possibly can. Usually that's pretty quick. But if you have any questions, just let me know. Again, your essay or your pre-write is due this Friday. So you got to email that to me somehow, some way. But your pre-write is due Friday by 5 p.m. Okay? So again, you can email it to me. If you have to take a picture on your phone and text it to me, that's cool too. But just get it to me by Friday at 5 or you're going to lose some points. Okay? Again, if you need anything, just let me know. Other than that, I guess I will speak with you soon via email, I'm sure. Have a good night, guys.